ESPN, Adrian Wojnarowski, and Tim McMahon reporting. In fact, I'll just read right from it. After weeks of conversations with ownership and management, Utah Jazz coach Quin Snyder's future remains unclear, and a possibility exists that he could decide to end his 8-year tenure with the franchise, sources told ESPN. While talks are described as good faith attempts at resolution that will keep Snyder, discussions with owner Ryan Smith and CEO of basketball operations Danny Ainge have yet to secure the coach's return for next season.
So, kind of interesting here. We got a couple of details. This is what we've been talking about for a month or so. It's not like this is necessarily breaking news, but we did get some new info on Quin Snyder's contract. He's got one more year, and then he has a coaching option. He's got his player option, as we call it, if he was on the floor. He's got his own option for the 23-24 season. So, he's definitely under contract next year. It's just whether or not he wants to come back and then pick up an option after that. And you and I have said quite a while, Jake, that we don't think the Jazz want to have somebody who's just kind of a lame duck.
No, it's not. That's not an option.
And then having your own kind of coaching option going in your final year kind of makes this year your lame duck year. Because if you decide to bolt, then the Jazz are in trouble.
No, it's now.
Holding the bag.
The decision is now. On both sides. On the franchise side and on certainly on Coach Snyder's side.
So this is the interesting paragraph out of this whole article that came out. It's not a very long article. Conversations have largely been centered on philosophical issues and how the sides can work together moving forward with the franchise trying to make the next step to the Western Conference contention.
There it is.
What do you make of philosophical issues?
Oh, control. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it does certainly seem like, if I'm interpreting that, the front office sees a style of play they want to see the Jazz institute, or certain elements that they want to see the Jazz use or try. And that could be as simple as like, hey, we want you to play the young guys, actually. We actually want to see what Jared Butler can do, or issues like that. And Quinn saying, well, I'm the coach. Let me be the coach.
Oh, man, it might be soap in the locker room. Who knows what, I want to use Dove. Who knows where the rubber meets the road? Maybe it's young guys, maybe it's whatever. But this is the dance when you get new ownership, right? And Ryan wants to do it a little different.
And Danny's going to want to do it
Danny's going to want to do it a little different. I doubt Quinn does. He probably likes how it's done. Probably thinks it's pretty good because he's the one who's been doing it for 8 years, which makes a lot of sense, right? I like bounce in the laundry, sir. Who knows what it is?
Danny's a Tide guy.
But this is, hey, Danny, why don't you play golf a lot and make some moves to get me the players that I tell you to get me?
Here's the thing. Again, we don't know what these philosophical issues are. The answer can't be, let's do the same thing again. Let's try it again with the same defensive scheme, with the same offensive scheme. Let's run it back. Because while it's very successful in the regular season, and even last year the regular season success wasn't as high as it was the year before, you can't go into the next playoffs if you're seriously trying to make a run and thinking that Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell with this current style of play is going to get you anywhere. I just don't think it's going to get you where you think you're going. So whatever these philosophical issues could be, it can't be a fight over, hey, should we try the same format or formula again, because it doesn't work.
I don't think that that's the issue. I would guess the issue is who makes the decision on where to go. All right, yeah, this isn't working, so what's the next thing? Who makes that decision? I would guess it's over that. And purely a guess here, Ben, because I saw some speculation online, but this is coming from the franchise. They're trying to put coach's feet to the fire.
Yeah, what do you think? Then that's the other question about this is why does this come out at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night? This is, hey, we had a conversation last night, or we're having a conversation today, and we're trying to make sure that this story is out there to create, a word that we used a lot last week, leverage for one side or the other.
Well, the longer this goes, the worse it is for the franchise, obviously. And who reported it?
Right.
It's not Mark Stein.
No.
Mark Stein didn't report it.
Right.
Adrian Wojnarowski reported it.
Yep.
And Tim McMahon, I'm sure, had a hand in it too. But I mean, this is the Jazz trying to up the pressure cooker on Quin Snyder and say, "Hey, listen, you got to pick. because we can't sit around here. The draft's coming up. We've got Kristen Peak coming up next.
Yeah.
Giving a preview on the draft.
Right.
Draft's right around the corner.
And you know what? We're trying to figure out if we're going to trade Rudy Gobert, or if we're going to trade Donovan Mitchell, or if we're going to blow it up,
or where we're going to go.
Yeah, or Mike Conley, or whatever. Yeah.
Are you on the train or off?
Yeah. And beyond this year, because we can't build a team for you for this year that's going to fit your style of play and have you opt out of your deal for Greg Popovich's job next summer, and then we have a team built for Quin Snyder trying to be coached by whoever.
Right.
That's a major issue.
Right.
That's an issue the Jazz do need to make sure that they have addressed, and I understand why that would be really difficult if you're you're running the Jazz.
And maybe this is about the dough.
It seems like that would be bizarre to me.
Maybe.
It seems like it would be about control.
I would agree with you, but it could be about give less control if you're going to compensate me more. You want me just to coach and keep my opinions to myself?
Yeah, right. Couple mil helps.
It'd be helpful if I had a east wing at my house where I could, keep my mouth shut a little bit easier.
But again, this isn't the Jazz 3 years ago where you thought, okay, just traded for Mike Conley, just traded for Bojan. Donovan's on the verge of becoming a star. No. Rudy's a star. You're at a different point in the franchise's trajectory.
Everything's different. Ownership's different. Management's different. Everything's different.
So that's the conversation from Woj and Tim McMahon last night. That's their article that they came out. We'll have it up at KSLSports.com as well. The other story that came out, we already have this up at KSL Sports, is Jake Fisher, again, from Bleacher Report, who's has kind of nose to the grindstone. He's been reporting on the Jazz a lot. He wrote this yesterday. The Jazz are weighing trade possibilities with three-time Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert, who NBA sources have pegged as one of Toronto's targets to satisfy its appetite for a starting rim protector. While there's much debate both around the league and among Utah staffers about whether moving Gobert, the Jazz's true defensive linchpin, is the most effective avenue to improving Utah's issues guarding on the perimeter, OG Anunoby would clearly pose a tremendous addition for any team lacking on the wing. And again, we're talking about philosophical issues with the Jazz. Do you play defense on the perimeter? Do you play defense at the paint? Because one of the things Quinn really seems to believe is having a 7-footer on the floor is the way to go. Those could be philosophical issues.
Or was he dealt a 7-footer?
Sure. And that's the best way to play with those cards.
And we did chat about this a little bit yesterday. And I got back to the point that you and I made. So the trade in there that they were talking about, and they talked about Mitchell and the Knicks too a little bit, Jake did. But Anunoby and the other one he mentioned in there, and I don't have it in front of me now. Who was it? Bear with me, Ben. But it was their young guard. That's right.
Gary Trent?
Gary Trent. Thank you. It's Gary Trent to make the math work.
Right.
And even Jake mentioned, Toronto probably wouldn't want to give up that much. But let's pretend that they did for a second.
Yeah.
Are the Jazz better next year with OG Anunoby and Gary Trent instead of Rudy Gobert?
Right. Rudy Gobert's $1. You're getting 2 50-cent pieces.
Yeah, they're not better. Maybe they're better on the perimeter defense, but that's not all that Rudy brings a ton of value.
Right. So if you add, and then you're talking about, yes, the contingency plans, the moves down the list. And then again, this is why it is so important to figure out what you're doing at your head coaching position before you make any of these moves. Because
correct.
Okay, you're probably not better without Rudy Gobert, but with OG Anunoby and Gary Trent. But maybe if you have Gary Trent and OG Anunoby, and then you trade Jordan Clarkson, or this situation, it's a forward, so you're trading Royce O'Neal plus another piece,
right? And
you get a center who replaces Rudy Gobert, and if they're serviceable, then maybe you're working with something. Then maybe you're a little more versatile. Then maybe you have a little bit of a different attack, and you're not perfect, but maybe you just are a little bit more difficult to slow than you are with this current team, which lacks a second gear, to use Dwayne Wade's verbiage. He said, the Jazz just don't have that other style of play to go to late in games. That's why they blew big leads so regularly. So those are the types of things you're talking about, and that's where I start to think of that screams to me philosophical issues. That's what that means more to me is, how do we want to play versus how we are currently playing if I'm Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck and talking to Quin Snyder.
Well, I would guess that Danny wants to build a different roster. If we really want to read into philosophical changes, I would guess that he wants to build a different roster. I would also guess that Quin Snyder probably isn't entirely opposed to that based on what I saw and interpreted as his attitude this year. Maybe that's not fair to Coach. If I apologize. But
that's not to say he's throwing Rudy under the bus or anything.
No. But it seemed to me a guy who was tired of dealing with it. Whatever it is, he was tired of it.
Yeah.
I've never heard Coach in the 8 years, his entire year here, or his career here, I've listened to pert near everything he said, and I've never heard anything like that Phoenix press conference. Not to keep coming back to that,
sure,
but I've never heard anything remotely like that. And if you want to let him off the hook a little bit too, you can say pandemic, you can say the pressures of coming through all that. We forget that the Jazz were the center of the COVID-19 universe.
Right.
They shut the Utah Jazz shut down
the world.
And Quin Snyder was right there. If you talk about kind of behind the scenes stuff, he was the one who was the leader during a very unique and trying situation. I mean, that's tough stuff. And maybe he's tired of it. He's tired of the athletic reports about unsalvageable. Who knows what it is? So the hang up maybe is, where does he go next? Or if he is going to stick around, he better get what he wants. I don't know. But philosophical differences. I wouldn't guess Quin Snyder is opposed to changing some stuff because he's not blind.
So let me ask you this, because we've talked about this with players. How many players in the league would you ask their opinion on roster building?
0.
So how many coaches would you ask?
Different.
I think it is a different conversation.
Philosophically, I actually agree with you, 0. But that's not reality. I mean, look at how Jerry Sloan ran things for years around here and did pretty well. Where, it was Scott Layden and it was Kevin O'Connor who were the GMs. But, Jerry was the voice, right? But Jerry's opinion carried a lot of weight.
But it did. There's a little bit of once bitten, twice shy in the NBA, just like everywhere in life. So the rumor was last offseason the Jazz had a trade offer for Joe Ingles last summer. And Quin Snyder put the kibosh on it. Said, no, I want to have Joe back. I don't want whatever this trade is. And I don't know if it was the Warriors trade that was rumored that was like a lottery pick, Moses Moody, and ended up being Eric Paschall for Joe Ingles. Or whatever the salaries were. And the Jazz said, okay, Quinn wants Joe back. We're going to bring Joe back. And then you end up getting pennies on the dollar for him at the trade deadline because he was hurt. Well, okay, it's not Quin Snyder's fault that he got hurt. But if you're a front office member and you thought, hey, I think I would like to get those younger players, give us a little more, flexibility financially throughout the year to maybe make another trade at the deadline to get better. Well, you didn't have that opportunity because you held on to Joe, and you held on to Joe because that's what the coach said. Next summer, you going to listen to the coach? Maybe not. So if those rumors are true, you understand why, hey, you're starting to have philosophical issues of, hey, Quinn wants to have input on what we get back for Rudy Gobert? He wasn't right last year. That happens. And then you've got Danny Ainge now in the front office. You're probably a little bit more empowered now that you're Ryan Smith because you've been doing it for longer. You just get better at the job as an owner. You start to believe in yourself a little bit more. I'm sure a lot of issues like that are at play in this conversation, why it's difficult.
Well, there's a reason that usually when a new executive is hired, they hire their own coach.
Yep.
What percentage of inherited coaches do you think keep their jobs? We mentioned Jerry.
Yep.
He kept his. Kyle Whittingham?
Very few, though.
Very few.
Almost none. It's got to be less than 20%.
I would guess.
Yeah. So, and then you know what? Who knows what else the Jazz have at play? Maybe the Jazz are willing to play hardball because they like their contingency plan. Maybe the Jazz are okay playing hardball with Quinn and saying, hey, you signed a contract. This is your offer.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
We've got another guy.
But either way, they want him to decide. That much is obvious.
Yeah, they need to know.
That's the meaning of that report. Everybody going, what does this really mean? Is this really new information? Well, yeah, it is. It's the Jazz turning up the heat.
Like you said, you're 3 weeks out from the draft. It's time to get the ball rolling.
It's now.